So you've obviously seen all the changes. Can you give me high level, like three of the biggest changes that you've noticed in terms of how media and pitching and how stories are being told?
We all seem to be in a hurry. I don't know if that's different really, but I think because we feel inundated from every different direction. So everybody's in a rush. We're in a rush to, if you are an entrepreneur, get your product, in production, get your product on the airwaves, get your product in local publications, get the word out, right? And that's time every single business out there that needs to spread the word. So I feel like as a consequence of all of us being in such a rush, writing has also kind of fallen a bit by the wayside.
Yay, welcome to another episode of the Small Business PR Podcast. I'm like really giddy in my chair right now because I just cannot wait to introduce our guest. She is a media powerhouse. She's also really recognized, probably the most famous people in media that we've interviewed. So she's been on all of the shows that you recognize, that I recognize. For example, Kelly and Ryan, Today's Show, Rachael Ray, Good Morning America, Wendy Williams, The View. I mean, I'm getting like tongue tied just talking about it. So thank you so much for being here, Amy, and welcome to the show.
I am so excited to be with you because we have some very shared social missions in our work, yours in public relations and mine in media as a journalist. So I am equally giddy.
There's so much I want to get into, but first, I want our audiences to know the depth of experience that you have had. You have really been an industry veteran in media for over 23 years. So can you tell us all the different places that you've covered, from broadcast to TV to radio to magazines, all of it?
I actually started in magazines when I first got into journalism. So I worked up the ranks in various magazines on, of course, the editor side and as a contributor, as an eventually an editor at large. My first gig was at InStyle magazine, very sadly no longer in print, but available digitally. And very early on there, I was kind of tapped to do television broadcast. And what that meant was we would send out our very own staff to either a radio interview or an interview on television with CNN Lifestyle, etc., to actually share the pages of the magazine and bring them to life. And so I was very young. I was still an editorial assistant when I was tapped to do TV. And ever since then, those relationships, I've just been building them over time. Now, after doing magazines for many, many years, my main gig right now is really doing on-air broadcasts, both editorial and sponsored work. The sponsored work pays the bills. But yeah, so I do a lot of television work now across all spaces, whether it's talk shows, news shows, radio programs, and joyfully now the podcast world. And what I do want to say is when I first started 23 years ago, it was a very different landscape. Blogs were just exploding. I remember coming out of J School at Columbia, everybody got a job. The digital world of publications was just sprouting up. So if you didn't get a job in one of the traditional avenues of television, radio, or print, there was all of this digital publication that was exploding. So everybody got a job then out of J School. And now we have, podcasts. Now we have so many different outlets in social media as well. So the way we distribute the news, the way we report the news, and the way we all absorb the news as well has changed dramatically during the course of my career.
And not to mention with the AI revolution that's happening.
That is a topic onto itself and one that we're all going to learn and adapt and grow with.
Yeah. So you've obviously seen all the changes. Can you give me high level, like three of the biggest changes that you've noticed in terms of how media and pitching and how stories are being told?
We all seem to be in a hurry. I don't know if that's different really, but I think because we feel inundated from every different direction, so much information, even information overload, if you don't have good filters for it. So everybody's in a rush. We're in a rush to, if you are an entrepreneur, get your product, in production, get your product on the airwaves, get your product in local publications, get the word out, right? And that's time every single business out there that needs to spread the word. So I feel like as a consequence of all of us being in such a rush, writing has also kind of fallen a bit by the wayside, which definitely impacts both sides. So I love a good story. And part of my world is telling stories, true stories. I'm telling stories about if I have a product lineup of the best gear for the beach this summer, right? It's not only telling you how these products work, but also sometimes like an entrepreneur story of how it was about, flopping around in a pool and then it designed a new floaty thing where you can, it's like a hot tub floating in the ocean, right? So everybody has a story that I am also trying to tell. But the pitches, when they're not well written, is difficult for me to then even envision how this could possibly then translate for the airwaves. So we're in a rush. Writing has fallen by the wayside. And also, another big thing is the greatest trait that I've seen for people like me, exactly like me, experts in their field. I'm a general reporter, but other people might specialize in beauty or fashion or only home decor or only food. So people just like me, those who have survived the test of time, and I do feel like I've been at this a little while, are those who have adapted. We've adapted to translating video on air to into social, whether that's Reels or whether it's TikTok or now there's Lemon 8, which actually is not a video platform, by the way. It's more graphic. And I just joined Lemon 8. I have 7 followers, but it's part of being to adapt with the times and how everything is being consumed. If I had remained in the same mindset I had in the early 2000s, I don't think I would still be in this career, right? So it's an ability to morph, change, adapt, be willing to try new things, even when you're very nervous about not wanting to shift what you might already do well. You have to do many things well all the time. And I feel that for entrepreneurs as well, as you wear a PR hat, you wear a business-minded hat, and you also have to wear kind of like a worldview hat to see where trends are changing, where you fall into this landscape. Can you present yourself in an innovative way that's fresh so that people want to share your news too?
I love that. I mean, there is a saying, adapt or die, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. I actually read a statistic. I think it was like a Cision's annual survey of journalists.
Mhm,
And one of the findings was that the top concern for journalists was fake news, kind of this loss of authority of how people were not trusting, like, journalists. And
mhm.
I always say that's actually a good thing for small business owners because it just means that journalists need to interview authentic, real, different people from all different perspectives. Would you agree that there's kind of an opportunity there for the little guys to be seen?
And I think the voices also of what we need is really expanding. I like to say that that was always a need to hear more voices and to have more businesses and to hear from small businesses. But I feel like now it really matters. And this is what consumers want. We want diverse stories. We want what reflects in society to reflect on the airwaves, to see what we see around us in our communities before us on the television screen. So, yes, I do think that this poses an opportunity for an expansion of voices to be heard. I think that's exactly what I've been trying to say this entire time. But also at the same time, it's really on us as journalists as well to stay credible. You have to follow the rules. You have to, and I very much have always been that way in my career, and to steadfastly report and also be very deep with the reporting and do my job as well. So that if you have all these fears about fake news, you can come to a trusted source. If you see my segments, you can come to a trusted source if you read any of my articles, that kind of thing. So it works both ways, I think.
Yeah, and I love that this landscape is changing because people do say that it's equalizing, where
Mhm.
now small businesses can get featured using social media and not having to pay a fancy PR firm 10, 20, 30, 40 grand. So do you also notice that shift happening, that people are doing PR just a little bit differently?
Oh, definitely. Definitely. And I think also just the accessibility of social where you can DM a company. Maybe you wouldn't have had that access before, and somebody in some form will get back to you. It's so helpful and it's a much quicker response time. So before those PR lists of contacts were so coveted and people would be very protective of that, I think that information is just widely sourced now and is more accessible and enables everybody to at least have the opportunity to make the ask.
Yeah, I love that. And I love what it is. It's breaking down the barrier. It's removing the middle person, if you will, right? So that
Hmm.
journalists, because you want to connect with the business owner, right? Like, do you actually prefer to have a PR rep in the middle, or do you prefer to talk to the business owner straight up?
So, in what inherently what you said, I want to speak to the person who tells the story with a clear and concise way and tells the story well. So, have every single business owner been a pleasure to work with? Oh, I've had my handfuls of tough relationships there too. In the same regard that sometimes publicists are very difficult, can be big personalities and can be difficult to really connect with and get the information I need from. To answer your question, whether it's a publicist, and I work with tons and tons of people on the PR world, and I've learned what, pitches attract me and what products are going to be great. And I go to people that I rely and trust in that same regard. I, want business owners to be very clear, very concise, give me good pitches, give me good stories. And I want to work with the people who are easy to work with and have great attitudes. I mean, without a doubt, I'm a small, independent, woman owned, woman of color business myself. All I want to work with is nice people. so, so I'm happy to work with people who are energetic and energized, but are not overly pushy or condescending, or, I mean, all the things that we want in a good business relationship.
Yeah, I love that. So it's not about how loud you scream in the chamber. It's the value you bring. And that's really my ethos and what I teach in my PR program, because I don't know if I told you this, but I've never worked a day in an agency, whether it's marketing or PR. So I didn't have relationships. I studied political science and I just started picking up the phone and cold calling. And so I kind of teach that method now. And I love how you validated that. It's not about the agency or how fancy you are or who you're rubbing shoulders with. It's the value of the pitch. Like knowing how to communicate your message, that is a skill that is absolutely priceless. Right? Like
Yeah.
knowing how to write, knowing how to do that. So let's talk about pitching. Like very high level. Can you tell me about how pitching has changed throughout the years and what types of pitches just like work and what type of pitches are like an automatic no from you?
Oh, again, I've been at this a while, so the good pitches really do stand out these days. And it goes back to that idea of like writing and writing well. And I know you do such a phenomenal job in teaching really good pointers to your followers and to your students. What I wanted to say was the one thing that I have many, many pet peeves. I'll run through them real quick here. The first thing is when I get an email that's like, "What are you working on right now?" Those are like, it's an absolute dead email to me because I get asked that so many times a day. And unfortunately, even if I love you, even if I have a great relationship with you, I don't have the time to answer that like times 25, times 50. Personal, individual, personalized emails back to you on what I'm working on. Always, always just pitch. I literally write that sometimes. I'm like, go ahead and pitch. It's like they need permission to pitch me. No, no, just go ahead. Tell me why are you here? What's your story? Make it concise, make it clear. I know you talk a lot about the subject line, and yes, very, very important. Whether it's something timely, something seasonal, if you can throw that into your subject line, and you understand the art of that very, very much. Also, I hate emails that don't include links to product. It could be the most beautiful pitch of writing in one deliciously concise paragraph, which I could eat for lunch. But if there is not a link in there or a picture of the product or a picture of the expert that you're pitching within that email, yeah, I'm at a loss. I don't know what this looks like. I don't know, maybe if you forgot the price point. I was just sending back. I'm like, this is so great. Sounds very promising. What's the price point? Right? Having to go back and ask those little questions because I didn't have a link to product to even check for myself is, ooh, you just don't want to waste people's time. You're going to only get them for a very short period of time. So definitely don't waste their time. Like just double check that. Editing down is very key. I know, let's just say like somebody is making these absolutely gorgeous bowls that have a section for hummus and a section for pita chips. And it's like your life's work, right? It took a year to develop them. You finally got them made. They have a special thing because maybe they're green. They're made from completely sustainable cornstarch or something. And you're ready. And so you're telling me your whole life story, starting from when you were 12, you dreamed of wanting to be an entrepreneur and being on Shark Tank and da da da. And I'm lost already. Like, what are you pitching? What's the thing? So please, I know we ask many things of you as entrepreneurs, but you've got to be an editor. Almost like go through your pitch a few times, and if you're yawning, I'm yawning. If you think, oh, this sentence is just not falling right, I'm going to be feeling the exact same way too. Like less is more, cut it down, make it concise, and give lots of resources, right? Again, the link to product, anything that you might think a person might need, a high resolution photo of the product. Some people like attachments, some people don't. I'm not necessarily opposed to attachments if they're relevant to the pitch. And if I want to click more, I want to click more on it, like right there. Another thing is for me, and this is coming from the TV world, if it's something that I just covered, it's unlikely I'm going to be covering it right again. So I'll give you an example. I had a segment. This was really great, very fun. It was all about honey, products that had honey in them, beauty products that had honey, whipped honey butters, products that were infused with honey that you could then wrap things up with. And it was also a bit about bee conservation and how we need to take care of our pollinators. So it was like a multifold social project as a segment. Right after that segment aired, I received 10 pitches on honey. And this is how the pitch started. I just saw your segment on honey, and here are 5 products that I have about honey. But when I've just done a national segment on honey, unfortunately, it's very unlikely that in the next month, in the next 3 months, even in the next 5 to 6 months, that I'm going to have another segment so specific about a topic such as honey. Now, it would be different with a more generalized category like best beauty buys for fall. If I've covered a range of beauty products and someone writes me, say, oh, I just saw you on covering this and that mascara and this and that blush, and I have these cosmetics, I know we've never been in touch before. Well, something more general like beauty might be something I might revisit in 3 months. But again, please just be aware of an individual person's work. It's not helpful, super helpful anyway. It's more like a product that I would be like, oh, thank you so much for your outreach. I will keep this on file for the next time that I cover honey.
Yeah. Yeah. And we have a whole training on gift guides that really talk about that too. But just to reiterate what you said, I mean, I hope y'all are taking notes, okay? Whoever's listening to this, you're just dropping so many gems. One of the things you said is if it's for TV, don't pitch something that you just pitched. So just be a good steward of the news, people. Like just look at what they've covered, right? And so you could turn that into an opportunity. So let's say if I do have something with honey, I might say, I love what you did with like edible beauty. Here is another product with this tea flower that is similar to what you covered, right? So like culinary things that can be used as beauty. So even though my stuff might have honey with it, I'm not leading with the honey, but I'm leading with a similar theme that's a little bit different. Like, would that work?
Yes, I love that. Showing awareness that you even saw one of my segments is just like so flattering, right? So even if you said, oh, I just saw your green goods segment last month on Earth Day, I have another sustainable idea, but it has like a cooling function. It might be really great for some of your summer pitches.
Yeah.
So you're literally giving me ideas for a segment, and that the next segment, propelling things forward, always thinking about what the next steps are. Or another way to think of it is like, how does this come off the branch of the tree? So she just covered green goods. So how can I segue that and tie it in with what I'm doing for what the future branch might be, which might be, again, like cooling products for summer, which I think did I have that last summer or 2 summers ago? So sometimes I revisit very specific pitches, like things that keep you cool. Literally, I think that was the segment. Or sleep awareness always comes back, like sleep awareness. I think it's in April. This is mental health awareness month. Now, I won't have as much with mental health awareness, but I'm already working on back to school. We're in May, and that's for August, but I've already been booked for back to school. So certain themes circle back every year. Other ones are just maybe I might have it 1 year, it might revisit in another 3 years. I had International Women's Day last year, which I mean, it was such a ballpark home run segment on multiple levels, because not only was it women-owned businesses, but it was women-owned businesses that give back. And many of them gave back to other future women rising entrepreneurs or organizations or education, like women, like girls in education. Or so unfortunately I didn't get that one rebooked, but I'm like, please, like a year from now, I want March 8th, I think it is, International Women's Day again.
Yeah, and our audience here is 95% women of color. So for the people that are listening, get your pitches ready, because if Amy does get that, we'll have so many amazing businesses to pitch that give back. I want to reiterate what you said. That was so powerful, which is think about how you can be a branch in the future. How can you extend that tree branch a little bit more? So it's not about replacing the branch, right? Like pitching the honey, but how can you take that a little bit further? And as you were talking about the different seasonalities, because as you know, especially with product, it's all about the season, right? Nobody wants to get pitched an entire catalog of all your 24 products. Pick one that's great. I was thinking we could even do one for like adaptogenic beauty stuff that helps you with focus and productivity for fall, back to school, right? That could be another one.
I love that. I love it. I want to, oh, yeah, something just sparked. I love this when this happens. But even when I have themes that repeat themselves, like back to school, and I have them every year, or and for years I did kids fashion. By the way, I retired from kids fashion, and now I've been roped back in. So you just never know how things are going to go so quickly. But I do, sometimes you'll have like repeat, or you'll see it again and again. Maybe it's Easter decor, or like it's fun summer games, or it's like how to throw the backyard party, or these repeat themes. Whenever I'm given an assignment that's a repeat, I always try to one up myself. I mean, like, why not? It's like, how do I do this better? How do I bring something different to this? Maybe a corner of this tabletop for the best backyard barbecues is going to be all green products, like green replaceable, the green plates that are portable but like disposable. You don't put them in the trash, you put them in the composter. Maybe it's all local. It's difficult on a national segment to do just local, but as long as they have a website, right? Local finds for barbecue sauces. And maybe you have diversity within that. So it's countrywide. So you have one in Tennessee, and then you have another one from Alabama, and then you have one from Texas, and maybe, hey, one from Seattle, like having a variety there. Or maybe it's different types of beers from breweries that are owned by BIPOC, owners. It's like, what can I bring to this segment that is one step up from what I did previously? I always have that attitude with all my segments. Actually, I'm like, how do I make this better? How do I make it brighter? How do I make it more entertaining for people who are listening at home? What's going to be the catch that's going to make them think, oh, yeah, I need this in my life? Or it can be a passion story about behind the product. I have some amazing, amazing stories coming up. I'm just trying to think of most recently. I did actually have green goods, and I had these products called Uni, and they're like changing the face of how we view showering products. So they have like a body wash and shampoo and conditioner, but they're all refillable systems. So it has like an end cap on it where it squirts, and then the bottom part is what's replaceable. It's made out of aluminum. You can recycle that yourself, or you can send those aluminum empty canisters back to the company, and they will refill them and send them back to you for a closed loop system. So this was the first time I've ever done closed loop. I think closed loop on Today anyway, the Today Show. And, it begs almost for another level of explanation, right? But I'm like, okay, so how do I, and it was made with super plants, and it was, phthalate, synthetic, no fragrance, all the free of everything, parabens, everything that we don't want. So it was really, really loaded with a lot of information. But how do you explain a closed loop system in 10 seconds or less? I mean, I must have practiced that for 2 hours. So depending on if Al was going to ask me, well, what does that mean? Or if somebody followed up and like, well, what does closed loop mean? I don't understand. What if I got that back from a host, right? So needless to say, some things require more explanation, but that had an incredible story, right? Like that main product, one green product out of many, it was really explaining for me on that one. It was like explaining point of origin, coming to you, cycling back, coming back to you. That's what closed loop is, right? So making it concise and digestible, that was the story behind that product. That was my job to explain it well.
Oh, I love that. And I love what you said. Actually, before we got on this call, you told me you're half Japanese and you speak Japanese. It was really important for you to highlight women of color and people doing different things. And so that's really why I wanted to have you on. Not only are you trying to shine a light on small business, but really bringing different voices and people from all lived experiences. The one thing, though, I will have to say is for a lot of the BIPOC communities, there's a lot of barriers we feel like we have to overcome, right? We somehow feel like, oh, we're just not ready, or we're too early stage. And there's all these like what ifs, right? How can we as small businesses that maybe just have a little product, great product, but very small, maybe we don't have a fancy website, what is the best way to get over that imposter syndrome so that we can still confidently pitch and think, wow, I can get onto the world stage, such as Today's Show? Because that seems like an impossible dream for so many.
Oh, definitely not impossible. It's just a matter of connecting and story and timing. We haven't talked about timing. We can talk in depth about when to pitch. One thing that you said made me think of something else within what you were saying about, oh, you said the website, you might not have a fancy
Mm.
website. So honestly, there are some like key components that you'll need for any segment. I always say start local, start in your local markets. Local television makes the world go round. I love doing segments, by the way, not just on a national stage, but like I do them all over the country all year long. I love working with locals. So, it's really good to get on with a local station at first, get your feet wet. If whether it's you talking about the product or another fellow expert, such as myself, like doing a roundup of products, it doesn't really matter. It's really, really good and somewhat important. So when you're first starting off, you do need a good, solid functioning website. Like you said, it doesn't have to be fancy, but I do need to be able to turn viewers somewhere to purchase your product if you're not in a brick and mortar or any kind of national distribution yet. You do need to be able to have sales from your website. And then the other thing, it really does help to have been featured in some other markets if they're local. It's not necessarily a requirement, but it does add strength to a pitch, especially when you're small. My producers will ask me the same questions over and over. Amy, have you vetted production? Have you vetted whether they can handle a heavy inquiry of orders? How many variety of product, is this the only product do they have? Do they have other products? Sometimes that's a factor, sometimes it's not. So please, I don't wish to make anybody feel trepidatious about that, but sometimes it is a factor. So these are all the questions that normally I vet out before I even pitch a producer, or even I have, my little antennas go up when I'm concerned, and sometimes I have had to pull out product from a smaller business because they didn't have the production, like they only had maybe 50 product samples or maybe 100 product samples. And I'm like, oh, well, those are going to go really quickly. Whereas that is a good thing. We also can't have people turning back and saying, well, I wanted to order this, but I couldn't order this. And what's up with that?
Mhm.
So that causes frustration, unfortunately, for the consumer. And we want everybody to be happy.
Yeah. Oh, I love that. So I feel like I'm going to need to turn this into like a two-part podcast episode because there's so much that you just covered. You're right. We did not cover timing yet, but just to
Oh,
recap what you said is you don't need the most optimized tech advanced website, but if you want to get on a show like today's show that has millions of people watching, you need to be ready for that inquiry, right? So
mhm.
making sure that you are able to sustain that. So that's important. What about social media presence? Do they need to be like, really mastery of the social media, or can they be somewhat unknown, but they have a great product?
So social media actually really doesn't come into factor unless you're an expert trying to pitch yourself to be on national TV. And then they'll look at your social media numbers and they want them to be quite robust. If you look at mine, they're moderate. And that's only because, I've been actually on Today for 20 years and many other shows for numerous years. Rachel just finished her final season this past season, but
Mhm.
I've been with Rachel since 2011. And you had said Kelly and Ryan at the top of the show. Now it's live with Kelly and Mark. And so I've been with her through, this is her third co-host that I've been through with Kelly. So I've been on numerous other shows, like Meredith Vieira's show that's now defunct. I've been around a little while. And so, yeah, those social numbers, they actually don't even ask for social numbers for businesses. So please don't worry about that. It's more
Oh,
about if you
God.
can, what stage your product is in, if it has been viably tested over time, and meaning like you maybe been out for a bit and they see the distribution channels are fine. And then it's really about product quantity. Here's another flag that just comes up in my reporting all the time. I might find something that I really want to cover, but several of the items are sold out on the website. Let's say, I actually just recently had this. I'm trying to remember what it was. Was it an inflatable canoe? I can't remember. An inflatable canoe. I just loved it. So fun for families, safe and my producer's like, is this safe? I'm like, no, it's been out for like a solid year. It's really good. People absolutely love it. But I think there was a problem, like certain sizes or colors were really not available. My producer really was worried about, again, distribution quantity and deliverables. So in that case, we had to take a pass. I can't really remember if it was the inflatable canoe, if it was something else. But if there's low inventory, it is a concern. It's like a red flag. I'll give you another tangible example. It was for Olympics. And actually, two of those Olympic games were very, very close together. It wasn't the Japanese Olympics. It was the other Olympics. So it must have been winter. And I wanted to feature these goggles, ski goggles, definitely winter, sorry, ski goggles. And I had to make sure there was an Olympic athlete tie into them, etc. But there was something wrong with, like, they didn't have enough distribution of the exact goggle that the athlete wore. And thus I could not feature it. I had to feature something else. So this is just an example of what happens on my end. You're busy pitching, but I'm also very busy vetting. And there's lots of different factors that go into it. So if I have, let me think of another segment. If I have like a lineup of, I did like camping in your backyard, right? So I'm going to need like a tent. I might need some kind of like stove of some kind for heat. I might need products for snacks, like maybe innovative backyard snacks that don't make a big mess. Some version of a s'more, but maybe that has a different twist to it. So once I did one with like blackberry jam and marshmallow, something different from your chocolate. But see, so from my end, I'm also looking to fill certain categories. And once a category is full, unfortunately, there isn't then again space for maybe your product that would have filled that category. So there's lots of different things on my end that I'm trying to balance as well. And as I told you at kind of top of show behind scenes, increasingly over time, if you watch any of my segments, if you go back and watch any of them, especially on the national level, I always try to include at least 1 to 2 small businesses. I always love to have BIPOC wherever possible, Latinx, Asian American business, AAPI, NH, Native Hawaiian. I love to incorporate more voices, give more platform. So if you watch any of my segments, you'll see me here say, oh, this is a Black American owned business, or this is a small business. I really love, you'll see that. So again, I'm trying to fill those slots too. So as much as you're scrambling and pitching and wondering why aren't they responding, at our end as well, there's a lot that we need to process. Many things we need to consider. And we haven't even talked about price points and where those fall. And every show has different rules, and every show has different deadlines, and every show I could be asked to do a segment within a week's time, or I could have a month's time. So those all of those things come into factor.
Right. I always say it's kind of like revolving luggage. Like when you're at the airport and you get your
Baggage
luggage,
carousel?
Right? Yeah. That's how the stories are. They're always moving. It doesn't mean
Mhm.
that your story is going to get picked up, but it's on the baggage carousel, right? So do you find that sometimes you go back into your inbox and you're looking for one very specific thing, and you might go back to a pitch that you got a few months ago because you
Mhm.
needed that one little piece?
Oh yeah, whereas my respond rate is probably relatively low, except for people that I'm in regular communication with in the PR world and individual businesses as well. I actually open a lot of emails if I'm interested, and then I have my own little system. I resend the email back to myself, and in the subject line, let's say there's 5 products in it, but I'm interested in product number 4. I'll be like, okay, so whipped moisturizer. I'll just put that in the subject line, resend it to myself, and then it goes in a file that's for beauty. So I just did one where people are now pitching me. I have a Father's Day segment, and you were talking about the baggage carousel. Oy vey is all I have to say to that. So Friday, I sent out an ask to my peeps and I said, listen, I have Father's Day and it's last minute. So it'll be on a Tuesday before Father's Day. Last night, overnight, with my producer texting me, it changed to the Friday before Father's Day. So no longer can products be really shipped unless it's overnight. So all the asks in my inbox, I have to talk about the baggage carousel. I got to go back and say, okay, thank you so much for providing detailed shipping information, which was one of the requirements on my ask. Please include shipping information so I know when the final deadlines are. And I got to go back and say, unless you can ship overnight, or you're available at a large distributor that's nationwide, can I cover your product repitch? That's what I'm going to do after this. Oh, joy.
Wow.
The baggage carousel of life.
Yeah, it's this kind of very complex web of so many different stories. And we don't have an insight into your editorial calendar because it's always changing. So the only thing that we can do as small businesses on the outside is to do our work, to understand what you're covering, to be a good steward of the news, and to know how to pitch in a very pithy and concise way.